Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast, where we provide education and resources for family matters in Polk, Highlands, and Hardee counties. We're so glad that you've joined us. So now, let's talk about it.
Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. My name is Natalia Clemens. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist here at Heartland for Children, and it is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So we are partnering and discussing teen violence with Peace River, here located in Polk County, that services Polk, Hardee, and Highlands County. And we're talking today with Cassie Long. She is the outreach coordinator here. Is that correct?
Correct.
Outreach coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Cassie. How did you get into this position? And, tell us a little bit about your role here at Peace River Center.
Sure. So I've been with Peace River Center going on 4 years now. I have really started out as a volunteer. So this is a field that I had always had interest in and always wanted to get involved in. Mm-hmm. And at the time when I started volunteering, I still had 2 small children at home, so I was trying to make the decision what I wanted to do. Yeah. So I did start volunteering and almost instantly realized that it was where I wanted to be. Yeah. This field was where I wanted to be. This was the work that I wanted to do. And so then I entered in like an internship role and started getting all of the training that I needed for an actual position. Yeah. And just went from there. I started eventually in the rape recovery unit. And under Melissa Irving, and worked with her for a while, and then I took on the role of CPI advocate, which is a domestic violence position and works with domestic violence cases that have an open DCF case involved. And I worked in that position for quite a while until I became the outreach coordinator.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so what does an outreach coordinator do at Peace River Center?
So we are coordinating, I oversee all of our DV programs.
Okay, so DV meaning
domestic violence programs. Our CPI program that works with DCF, our primary prevention program, which is responsible for outreach in the community, doing prevention services in the schools, helping with trainings with law enforcement and community partners, that kind of thing. And then we also have a courthouse program right now where we have a courthouse advocate who is actually stationed, co-located at the courthouse 3 days a week to help clients with the courthouse process, which can be kind of daunting.
So overwhelming.
It is so overwhelming, especially when you're in the trauma situation
of domestic violence.
Correct. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out how to file an injunction and figure out your rights and what you can do. It's vast. Yeah. So that's what that position does.
Wonderful. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's get into it. What do we mean when we say teen dating violence? What does that even mean?
When we say teen dating violence, we are referring to any physical, psychological, sexual abuse or harassment following, stalking, cyber stalking of any individual that is 12 to 18 years old in age. And this typically occurs in the context of a past or present consensual romantic relationship.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so that was really good. That was a really great definition. How is teen dating violence right now affecting our youth?
It has a very large effect on our youth, okay? As the youth is experiencing the violence, they are experiencing withdrawal from once loved activities, withdrawal from friends, withdrawal from families. They're experiencing poor academic performance. It affects them emotionally in many different ways, especially in females. We see it cause eating disorders. Okay. That they're at an increased risk for eating disorders and that kind of thing. They're at an increased risk of depression and anxiety. So those are the things that we see in youth, but studies are now showing that it affects youth far into adulthood. Okay, when they experience this violence early on, it follows them into adulthood and makes them more susceptible to an abusive relationship in adulthood as well.
Right.
And to carry on that pattern.
You can see that from when they were teens. It's kind of that correlation that continues to happen, that cycle that continues to happen.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And we also see that as they become adults, it makes them at a higher risk for suicide, a higher risk for cardiovascular disease, and other health problems, and puts them at a higher risk for continued psychological problems and PTSD, anxiety, and depression.
Okay. So is there, this might be difficult to answer, is there a cause? Like what is leading to this? What is impacting our youth that it is, because we talked about, I heard the cyberbullying, the physical, the stalking, why and what is causing?
Really, it is one partner's desire to control another. And for some reason, we're seeing this earlier and earlier. It is also, once you get into that situation, trying to figure out how to pull yourself from that situation, especially as an adolescent. Mm-hmm. Teenagers today, social media runs their lives a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they compare themselves to others on social media. Mm-hmm. And they see this person in a relationship, they see this person in a relationship, and often the face that they're putting out on social media is not what's happening behind the scenes. You know, but they will try to maintain that for the social aspect.
And as a teenager, I'm assuming also that they don't have the tools already. Their brains are not developed. They don't have these life skills. Even it's hard for adults.
Yes.
But imagine being a teenager and not having that toolkit of, this is a red flag. They couldn't even identify it.
Exactly. And unfortunately, in a lot of the outreach events we do where we come in contact with youth and their parents, I think those conversations aren't always being had with the youth, because we come across a lot of parents that once we start having that conversation, they will look at the child and say, well, has anything like that ever happened to you? So we can't be scared to have these conversations. Yeah. We have to have these conversations. Mm-hmm. They're so important to have.
Wow. But I imagine like even kids can become withdrawn, secretive.
Yes.
Afraid of punishment, afraid of consequences, afraid of talking about it with the teacher.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things we try to do in the school system, is to empower them, empower them to use their voice. If they are experiencing anything like this, empower them to use their voice and speak to someone. And a lot of the times it's not going to be a parent because they are afraid of that. Yeah. A lot of the time it's going to be a guidance counselor. It's going to be someone outside the circle. And that is fine. That's why we try to make sure that they know that those people are there for them in that situation, and that they can use their voice and speak up.
I want to get a little deeper into this in a second, because I think, we're really hitting a nerve of what it feels like in this day and age to speak honestly, be believed, and not have that bullying or not have that exclusion, because that's happening a lot. I want to get into that.
Okay.
But I first want to talk about unhealthy signs. I know we talked about the definition of it, but what are these red flags? What are these unhealthy signs in a relationship? This is male and female.
Correct.
This isn't just a female issue. Correct. What are those unhealthy signs?
Any kind of controlling behavior, and that's typically where it starts. Any kind of controlling behavior, controlling who he or she can or cannot have contact with, who they can be friends with, who they can't be friends with, where they can go, what they can do and when, what they can wear, what they cannot wear, wanting to be a part of every extracurricular activity so that they know what the other partner is doing at every given moment. Using social media to keep tabs on the partner, which is, I believe, referred to now as clocking, using Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram to keep up with movements, see what's going on in the other person's life, more so than a partner typically would, you know. Any kind of stalking and following. Isolation is a big one, because the more that they can isolate you from your support system, from your friends, from your family, from any potential resource or support, the more they can control you, the more control that they can have. So we see isolation a lot. Of course, any kind of physical abuse or sexual abuse.
That's pretty clear.
Yeah. Yes.
It's the controlling behaviors that tend to have the blurry lines, or perhaps even stalking, like you said earlier.
Yes.
That can have a blurry line. Well, they just care about me. And this is not just, because as I'm hearing you talk, this isn't just a romantic type of relationship. This could just be a friendship.
It absolutely could. Yes, it absolutely could. And a lot of people don't realize that. But we see these kind of behaviors happen in all kinds of relationships, not just romantic.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to get into the parent-caregiver side of this. As a parent or caregiver, you're noticing these unhealthy signs in that teen, in that youth. What do you do? Because we can talk about the child that's experiencing it, the teen dating violence, and then I want to talk about the child that's perpetrating the violence. So let's start with experiencing teen dating violence. How does a parent or caregiver approach this?
So you want to approach it with resources in hand.
Okay.
Once you have identified there is definitely a problem, and you see a problem, you see all the signs and symptoms, you want to build a support system first. You want to find your resources. You want to reach out to your programs that can help and have counseling services available and resources for teen dating violence. Reach out to your social services organizations, reach out to Peace River Center, reach out to any kind of support network you can find. Once you have the resources available, then you can approach your child and have the conversation, but approach it calmly. That's the number one thing that I can say, is approach it calmly. Don't approach it, or try not to approach it. I am a parent when I say this.
Oh, we're not talking to this kid again.
Exactly. I am a parent when I say this. But try to approach it calmly and not with an accusatory tone at first, okay? And have those resources in hand. Any kind of literature you can find to sit down with your child and show them these are the signs and the symptoms, and try to correlate those with things that you have seen, that you know that the child has experienced, and behavior from the perpetrator that you have seen or you know about. Lay your concerns out, and I would say use your support network.
Okay. Got it. And so now going to the perpetrator, that doesn't feel good as a parent, especially one that's involved, and they see these unhealthy signs in their child perpetrating these actions on someone else. What do you guys suggest for those families?
So kind of the same thing. There is a support network available for that too, because let's face it, that's the bigger picture. That's the bigger picture, is addressing that behavior. We will get nowhere until we do that. Okay? So there are programs available for youth and for adults that have batterers intervention, and programs that are available for counseling. So I would suggest those parents, before it gets to a point where the child is in trouble, as early as they can approach the problem, if they are involved, to look for those resources as well. And a lot of the times the same social services organizations offer those as the social services organizations that offer help for the.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Sorry. It's okay. So reach out to those organizations and find the resources that you need for the child.
And now Peace River, I know you guys serve Polk, Highlands, and Hardee County. Tri-County, and your goal is to serve in our schools, in our after-school programs, in our colleges.
Yeah.
So what are the resources that the prevention services that you are giving to these schools?
So we are going into the schools and first and foremost talking about healthy relationships and what that looks like.
Okay.
What does that mean? And unhealthy relationships, what does that look like? It's never too early to have this conversation. We can gear this conversation no matter what age group we're dealing with. There are ways to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's never too early to have that conversation. So healthy relationships, what does that look like? Is there respect? Is there trust? Unhealthy relationships, what does that look like? And then we are, it's not fun to talk about violence. That's not a fun conversation to have, but it's not a conversation we can avoid today either. So in the older age groups, we do touch on violence. And what does that look like? And the signs and symptoms of this. And then we try to empower them to use their voice and to make connections with the people they need to make connections with to get help. But we also try to empower bystanders. Empower bystanders to find their voice, because a lot of people don't want to get involved, or they think if they get involved, it'll bring negative consequences upon themselves, you know. So we try to empower bystanders to use their voice. If you see something, say something, you know, whether that's to the youth that is experiencing this, or if you think you need to go ahead and go to a guidance counselor or that kind of thing. But empowering bystanders to notice these signs and symptoms and to reach out for help as well.
I want to dive a little deeper into questions that you can ask your teens, but also young children, that begin these healthy conversations of what is unhealthy. So one example that I've heard in the past is asking a child, what does it look like for somebody to show you love? And a lot of the times, so I had this example given to me from someone who also works in teen dating violence. And she said that in 15 years, she only had one child. So the rest of them were using examples like, they kiss me, they hug me. It was all physical touch. And in 15 years, only one child said, they write me a poem or write me a story. That a lot of children associate affection with that touch.
Yes.
And us really teaching our children that love is more than just physical touch or affection. That's a part of it.
Yes.
But what does healthy touch look like?
Exactly.
You know, what are other ways we can show affection to one another?
So important. And those are things that we employ with the younger group. We've graduated from stranger danger. Let's be honest. The vast majority of the time, it is not a stranger. Okay. The vast majority of the time, it's going to be someone close to you or someone that you know, an acquaintance or a family member, friend. So those are the conversations we do have in the younger groups. Is how do your caretakers or caregivers show you love? Healthy touching versus unhealthy touching, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what we employ for them.
Gotcha. And for those older kids and teens, I know that you said you do talk about violence. What does that mean?
So a lot of the times when we talk about violence, the reactions can be different for every age group and every group we're in front of. I'm always surprised though with them. Like I just did one this past week, and they were so engaged in the conversation. And this was a group of teen parents that I talked to earlier in the week. And so when we talk about violence, I try to be very transparent. Okay. with that age group, I really don't think you can be too harsh or too strong. So we talk about physical violence. What does that look like? What are the injuries I have seen? A person that is capable of strangling you is 8 times more likely to commit homicide. And we see strangulation a lot. So we talk about these things. And I feel you have to.
Yeah, you really do.
You have to have these conversations. So
because it is happening.
Yes.
To go back to what we were talking about earlier, this fear of coming forward, this fear of being believed. If I come forward, I'm going to be punished. But then there's also, I notice, a culture within the teens themselves of exclusion, of gaslighting. Can you speak to those supports, or what do you guys teach in regards to that?
So that is something that we see, and that is one of the hardest moments, I think, when a teen in an abusive relationship is coming forward, because they have the same friends. It's typically the same friend group. So what are going to be the consequences of that when she comes forward? Who's going to take his side? Who's going to take her side? What's that going to look like for her socially at school afterwards? That is a big concern for a teenage person. You know what I mean? Whether they're male or female, that is a big concern, is your social circle at that time. So that is one of the main reasons that we're trying to get into the schools and to educate, to try to prevent these situations as well. When someone does come forward and say this is happening to them, they will be believed and they will be supported. If we educate the youth to know that this behavior is wrong, and if you see something, say something, and that person needs your support, then we can prevent that situation. So that is one of our biggest goals in the school, is to prevent exclusion as well when this situation does occur.
Got it. So let's say I'm a parent or caregiver. I'm seeing the signs. I'm getting ready to talk to my child, and how do I reach out to Peace River? What can I expect as help in regards to teen dating violence resources?
Okay, all right. We have 2 hotlines. Okay. One of them is a 24-hour hotline. You call the hotline any time of day, and someone is going to answer to talk to you about your situation. Okay. Depending on where you need to go for services from there, they will refer you to an advocate within Peace River, and that advocate will be available to schedule an appointment with you and your youth to provide resources and support and counseling, and to structure any kind of safety plan that needs to be developed, and just to provide support.
Gotcha. And let's say I'm an after school program.
Yes.
And I'm hearing this podcast, and I really would like to bring these resources into our curriculum. How do I approach Peace River?
So just give us a call here at Peace River Center Victim Services, and that is something we can definitely facilitate for you.
Got it.
Yes.
Gotcha. And if you were going to be bringing that into a school curriculum, what does that look like?
So when we enter schools, we try to be at least one school per month, whether that is a grade school, whether that is a college campus. We typically have more than that, but we try to be at least one lower youth oriented activity per month. And typically it's an hour-long class, and it is a prevention model, discussing healthy relationships and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Cassie, thank you so much for chatting with us today, for sharing about teen dating violence, but also for sharing resources. This is a topic that we all know it. It's very obvious that it happens, and I really believe that more parents and caregivers would love to have more access to these resources. I think it really is. We just don't know. We don't know that they're here. And I would love to see more partnerships with Peace River in our communities and with our families. So thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. There is a great need for foster families who are willing to open their hearts and homes to teens, sibling groups, and children with special needs. To learn more, check out the description for resources or visit heartlandforchildren.org.